So hello! Today we're looking at how to write a pop ballad. And first things first, this is going to be an entire song I'm writing, and I can't do that in 15 minutes, unfortunately. So this is going to be split into more parts. So today we're just looking at the verse. Furthermore, I'm doing this in notation, so if you don't know notation, you might be left a bit behind. If you don't know notation and want to watch the video, please, by all means, do so. And then, actually, can I get you to write a comment about whether or not you could follow along if you have some basic idea of how music works, but don't know notation, if you could still follow along, it would be great to know. So yeah, let's get started. And I'm going to choose some chords, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a reactionary progression. So I'm going from D, I'm going to explain what that is in a minute. So I'm going from D to F sharp minor to to E minor. Now, the reason why that's a reactionary progression is because we start here at the D, and then we move one up to an F sharp, right? Then we not move one, we move a third up to an F sharp, and then we move a second up to G. And then we move a third down to E, and then we move once again, a second down because we're going back to D at the end. Now, that moved up there. The reason that's a reactionary progression because first we move up a third, and then we move up a second, and then we move down a third, and then we move down a second. So it's the same intervals, but first we have it going up, and then we have it going down. So it creates a reaction to itself. That's a reactionary progression. Now, because this is a pop ballad, we don't want to have clear stresses, so I don't want to make all the notes play here at the first beat of the measure. Instead, I'm going to make an arpeggio, which means I just take all the notes of the chord, and instead of playing them at the same time, I play them over time. So you see here we have the D, we have the F sharp, we have the A, and we have the F sharp once again, which are the notes of a D major chord. And then we go here, we have the F sharp, and we have the C sharp, and the F sharp, and we have the A, which is the notes of a F sharp minor chord. Then we have a B and a D and a G, which goes again down to D, which are the notes of a G major chord. And then we have a B, an E, and G, which is the notes of an E minor chord. So let's hear that first. So I didn't really like the last one, so what I'm going to do is actually I'm changing it into an E minor 7 B flat 5th. Again, because this is a chord that doesn't fit in our... This is a chord that doesn't actually fit in our D major scale. It actually fits in with the D minor scale, but it's very common to use this in pop music. That Christmas song, All I Want for Christmas Is You, uses that chord all the time. Furthermore, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this actually into G at 2. And if you saw my last video, you might get an idea of one of my favorite chords by now. Because then I can hold, this A that I have going here in the first measure and the second measure, I can hold that over here in the third measure. And actually, I think I'm going to change this into an A as well. Doesn't really change the chord, but it keeps that same note. Lastly, let's create some more bass line because the bass got a bit of boring. So I'm just doing this, and the reason I'm doing that is, again, here I don't want it. Here we have an empty spot, so we can have a D, or not a D, we have a note put in, which in this case is an F sharp from the bass, because there's nothing playing in the right hand. Well, here there's something playing in the right hand there, so we're just moving it a bit over, so it doesn't occur at the same time again, because we don't want to have two clear stresses in this. The only time we really want to have the notes playing at the same time is on the first beat of the chord. And here I'm actually going to create a little pickup which leads over to the next chord, and again I'm changing it to a B flat and a C instead of a B and a C sharp. And the reason I do that is because, again, this chord is actually, you know, would fit in with a D minor, so I'm using the notes of a D minor scale instead of a D major. Now let's try and listen to it. Great, and the reason I've put two, you know, lines here is to indicate that this is actually our intro, and now our intro is done. Now we want to move on with the verse, but I'm going to copy paste these chords and put in, because, oh shoot, we don't want these tempo markings, because we're just going to use the same chords in the verse and going to use the same arrangement. Now we have a singer here who has to sing something, and again, a good way to start writing a melody, if you have no idea for a melody, is to make an arpeggio. So I'm going to start it here on an A, and the reason I'm starting on an A is because it's an empty interval. Like if you're playing or singing a third, it is either a major third and a minor third, and as such it becomes gendered to either major or minor. But the fifth is the same whether you are playing in major or minor, and as such it becomes more empty, becomes more vague. And if you don't want your song to be so intense, which we don't want because, you know, it's a ballad, it actually works really well to have that empty interval. And then again, arpeggio, so I'm moving down to an F sharp, and then I don't actually want to take the D because I'm creating a syncopation, which means that this note is linked to this chord over here. The stress of the melody comes before it actually should. Normally you would have the stress on one, but in ballads, at least I tend to not put the stresses in the verse on one, because again, you don't want to have clear stresses. You want to make everything a bit fluent, and the arrangement has the stress on the one, so we don't want our melody to have the stress on the first beat. So let's try and hear this bit. That works, I like that. Now, this little phrase, because this is a phrase, just a little phrase, but a phrase, and that's all moving down. So again, to create a reactionary reactionary phrase, instead of, you know, moving further down, we're going to move up. And here, so yeah, we're going to move up. I'm just going to move that there. And the thing I'm going to do is I'm making a little rule for myself. So here you can see I have three notes. These three notes together move down, and these three notes together move up. So now I'm going to have three notes that together move down, and I'm going down to this B. I'm skipping the C sharp and going down to a B because it fits better with the chord. Because there's no C sharp in the chord, but there's a very clear B because it's the third. So here we have three notes that, you know, these three notes go down. This is just a repetition. So now we need three notes that go up, and again, I don't want to have the stresses on the one, so I'm creating a syncopation there, and I'm really just, you know, creating the same melody again. Now I don't want that to be a natural B because, you know, we already have a flat B flat in the chord, so I'm changing that to a B flat. And let's hear this little melody now. I mean, we have sort of a collision between this B flat and our A up here, but I think it works, and I think it's going to sound more natural once it's a person who sings it, you know, the B flat, rather than this electric piano sound we have going on. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually just taking and copying, not the entire thing, I'm just copying the melody down into here. because we're going to have a repetitive melody in the verse. I like doing that, and that's generally a thing you hear all the time. But I don't want it to end the exact same way. And an easy way to, change the entire feeling of the song is just remove one note, especially the last note. Suddenly the entire feeling of the phrase has been changed because, you missed one of the most important notes. So let's hear what we have so far, melody-wise. Great. So now we need to write a text, and we'll write the lyrics. And some things, all I'm doing here is really mathematics. I'm using techniques and I'm using a system, so I don't have to go through a creative process. I'm just doing math to write a song. And that's not as easy with lyrics because there's a lot of creative process in what words you choose and such. But some things we can do mathematically. For an example, where the natural stresses are now. Normally the stresses would be on the first beat and on the third beat. But you see, we never have stress on the first beat because of all the syncopations we use. So instead, our stresses are on the third beat, which means here, and on the syncopation over to the first beat, which means here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to mark all the places that are stresses, and I'm doing that by using that little sign there. So yeah, you see the syncopation to the first beat, the third beat, syncopation to first beat, third beat, syncopation to the third beat, syncopation or shoot. Syncopation to first beat, syncopation to first beat, third beat, syncopation to first beat, and syncopation to third beat actually. So now I know where all the stresses of my sentences need to be. So these are like the important words of the sentences need to be on these places. Now furthermore, we need to have some rhyme scheme, and the rhyme scheme I'm going to use today at least is an AB. So we have our first phrase is going to rhyme with our third phrase, and so I'm giving those two an A to know those two are going to rhyme. And our second phrase, which I give a B, is going to rhyme with our third phrase, which is going to get a B. And so I just need to come up with sentences that fit the syllables of the melody I have. Now we're writing a pop ballad, so let's be honest here. More likely than not, it's going to be a love song. And more likely than not, that's also the song that you're going to write, because most songs are love songs. So let's work with that idea, right? At least for now. And you never want to go out and say like it is, The thing is, you want to show, not say. So instead of saying I love you, you should say I love you by using other words. And what I like to do is I like to create similes and metaphors. So for an example, what we can write here is I stick with you. Stick with you like tongues that stick to lamp posts that's frozen in this frozen in the snow. Yeah, I stick with you like tongues that stick to lamppost that's frozen in the snow. We all know that feeling. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm not saying like, we are inseparable, we are clingy together and we like each other. I'm saying, I am saying that, but I'm not saying it literally. I'm not saying directly. I'm saying it through a metaphor that, we fit together. And now we need a word that rhymes with you down here. So first thing that comes to mind, so sad but true. I don't know why. And let's make another simile. I'm just going to delete what we have going here. Like time that keeps on flying with nowhere to go. So now we have go, which rhymes with snow, and we have you, which rhymes with true. So I'm not going to sing it. I'm going to spare you for that miserable experience. I'm just going to let it play, and then you can, sing it for yourself, get the idea of how it would be if someone sung it. So you see the important words and the natural stresses of the sentence fit with the natural stresses of the melody, and that, gives it a nice flow. So yeah, that's what we're going to look at today. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a question in the comment if you have any question, and if you want to stick along and see the song, how it ends up being, subscribe so you know when a new video about it is coming up. And goodbye.